I worked my hands raw to give her everything, every blister, every ache, every sleepless night, all for her. And she spent her life pretending I didn't exist. 65 years old now, sitting in this empty apartment with walls that echo my breathing, and I can still see her face that day at the elementary school gate. The way she looked at me, then looked away. The way shame crossed her features like a shadow, darkening everything I thought we had. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me start where it really began. Or maybe where it really ended. It's hard to tell the difference anymore. On the morning she was born, the nurse placed her in my arms and said, "She's beautiful." I looked down at that tiny, wrinkled face and thought, I will give you the world. I didn't have a husband. He'd left when I told him I was pregnant, disappeared like smoke, didn't have money, didn't have education. But I had 2 hands and a will made of iron. And I promised her right then, promised this squirming little creature who didn't even know my name yet, that she would have everything I never did. I named her Sarah, Sarah Chen, a good, strong name. Those first years were the hardest. I worked at a textile factory during the day, standing for 12 hours at a machine that clattered so loud I couldn't hear my own thoughts. My supervisor was a man named Mr. Wang, thin as a rail with eyes like a hawk, who docked our pay if we took bathroom breaks longer than 3 minutes. I learned to hold it, learned to ignore the pain in my bladder, the cramping in my legs, the way my vision would blur from exhaustion. At night, I cleaned offices downtown, got on my knees and scrubbed floors while businessmen worked late in their glass-walled offices, never looking down, never seeing me. Sarah stayed with Mrs. Liu next door, an old woman who watched her for almost nothing because she was lonely and liked the company. I'd come home at midnight, lift my sleeping daughter from Mrs. Liu's couch, carry her to our bed. Sometimes I was too tired to even change out of my work clothes. I'd just lie there in the dark, listening to Sarah breathe, feeling her small warmth against my side, and think, this is why. This is everything. When Sarah turned 6, I enrolled her in the best elementary school I could afford, which meant the best public school in a decent neighbourhood, 40 minutes away by bus. I took on a 3rd job on weekends, cooking in a restaurant kitchen where the heat made my face feel like it was melting, and the head chef screamed at us in Cantonese I barely understood. My hands were always raw from dishwater, always bandaged somewhere, always aching. But Sarah had new uniforms. Sarah had textbooks. Sarah had a lunchbox with cartoon characters on it that the other kids admired. The first time she was ashamed of me, she was 8 years old. I remember the day with perfect clarity. It was autumn, the air crisp and golden, leaves skittering across the sidewalk. I'd taken the afternoon off from the factory, lost half a day's pay, to bring Sarah her lunch. She'd forgotten it that morning in her rush to catch the school bus, and I knew she'd be hungry. I knew she got headaches when she didn't eat. So I wrapped up the rice and vegetables I'd cooked the night before, put it in a plastic container because we didn't have a proper thermos, and walked the 40 minutes to her school. My hands were blistered that day. I'd burned them the night before on the restaurant stove, reaching for a pot without thinking, and the skin had bubbled up white and angry. I'd wrapped them in clean rags, couldn't afford proper bandages, and kept working. They throbbed as I walked, clutching that plastic container like it was precious cargo. When I reached the school gates, I saw her in the playground. She was with a group of girls, all wearing clean uniforms, hair neatly braided, laughing about something. I called her name. "Sarah! Sarah, sweetie, you forgot your lunch!" She turned, saw me, and in her eyes, I watched something die. She looked at my worn coat, patched at the elbows, at my cloth shoes with the soles wearing thin, at my bandaged hands, at my face, weathered and lined from years of night shifts and worry. And then she looked at her friends, at their smooth young faces going curious and then, worse, pitying. "Who's that, Sarah?" one of them asked. I waited, smiled, held up the container. Sarah's voice came out small, strangled. "Nobody. Just The cleaning lady from our building. The words hit me like fists, but I kept smiling. Walked over, handed her the container. You forgot this, dear, I said softly, playing along, dying inside. Thanks, she muttered, not meeting my eyes. I wanted to grab her shoulders, wanted to say, I'm your mother. I'm the one who held you when you cried at night. I'm the one who works 3 jobs so you can go to this school. I'm the one who loves you more than life itself. Look at me. See me. But I didn't. I just nodded and walked away, my blistered hands empty, my heart cracking down the middle like old porcelain. That night she ate the lunch without comment. Never said thank you, never apologized, and I never mentioned it. What was there to say? I understood. I understood that she wanted to fit in, wanted to be like the other children with their put-together parents and their easy lives. I understood that my poverty was a weight around her neck, dragging her down when she was trying so hard to rise up. So I loved her in silence, loved her through the shame. But the years passed. Sarah grew up smart and beautiful and ambitious. She studied hard. I made sure of that, sitting with her every night after my shifts, helping with homework even when I could barely keep my eyes open. When she was in high school, I took on another job delivering newspapers at dawn, 4 hours of sleep a night, but Sarah got tutoring. Sarah got new clothes. Sarah went on school trips. I saved every penny, skipped meals, told her I wasn't hungry, that I'd eaten at work, walked miles instead of taking the bus, wearing out my shoes until they were held together with tape and prayer. All so she could have brand names, could eat in restaurants with her friends, could look like she belonged to a different world than the one I inhabited. She got into university. A good one. I cried when the acceptance letter came, tears of joy and exhaustion and something like vindication. See? I wanted to shout at the universe. See what we did? See what she became? The tuition was astronomical. I took out loans, picked up more work. There was a period of 3 years where I don't think I had a single full night's sleep. I was cleaning offices, working at the factory, cooking at the restaurant, doing laundry for a dry cleaner under the table. My body was breaking down. I could feel it in my joints, in the way my heart would skip beats, in the cough that wouldn't go away. But Sarah was in university. Sarah was studying business. Sarah was going to be someone. She came home once a semester, sometimes less. When she did, she was always on her phone, always distracted, always talking about her friends and her classes and her opportunities. I listened, hungry for every detail, storing up these scraps of her life like a beggar hoarding breadcrumbs. Mum, you should rest more, she'd say absently, scrolling through her phone. You look tired. I wanted to laugh. Rest? When? Between which job? But I'd smile and say, I'm fine, sweetie, tell me more about your classes. She graduated summa cum laude. I was there in the audience, wearing the one good dress I owned, hands folded to hide the permanent calluses and scars. I watched her walk across that stage, watched her accept her diploma, and my heart swelled so large I thought it might burst through my ribs. She was someone now, she'd made it. All those years, all that sacrifice, it was worth it. Except she still didn't see me. Sarah got a job at a prestigious consulting firm. Started making more money in a month than I made in a year. Moved into a sleek apartment in the city with floor-to-ceiling windows and furniture that looked like art. I visited once. She seemed nervous the whole time, like she was afraid I'd break something or say the wrong thing. It's beautiful, I said, running my hand along the smooth counter. My rough fingers caught on the marble surface. Thanks, she said, checking her watch. I actually have a work thing in an hour. I left early, took the bus back to my neighbourhood, back to my cramped apartment with its peeling paint and temperamental heating, and felt the distance between us yawn wider than miles. She called sometimes, sent money which I saved and never spent. What would I spend it on? I had everything I needed. I had work. I had the memory of her childhood laughter. I had the hope that someday, she'd look at me the way I looked at her. The worst day came 3 years after she graduated. She'd invited me to a company dinner, some celebration, a promotion maybe. I wore my good dress again, took 2 buses to get there, walked into a restaurant where the cheapest dish on the menu cost more than my weekly grocery budget. Sarah was there with her colleagues, beautiful people in beautiful clothes, laughing with the ease of those who've never known hunger or fear or the kind of exhaustion that settles into your bones like frost. "Mom!" She waved me over, smiling, but I could see the tension in her shoulders. I walked to the table. Everyone looked up. "Everyone, this is—" Sarah paused. I saw her eyes flick over me, taking in my worn dress, my weathered hands, my grey hair that I'd tried to style but that stubbornly remained flat and thin. "This is Mrs. Chen. She helps out at my apartment sometimes." The lie was smooth, practiced, almost, like she'd prepared it. I stood there, frozen. The colleagues smiled politely, nodded, went back to their conversation. Sarah pulled out a chair at the end of the table, not next to her but at the end, slightly removed from the group. I sat, ordered the cheapest thing on the menu, soup, watched Sarah laugh and talk and shine, this brilliant creature I'd created who belonged to this world of crystal glasses and soft music and people who'd never scrubbed a floor in their lives. And I was invisible. I left early, claiming a headache. Sarah barely noticed. I rode the bus home with tears streaming down my face, silent, because I'd learned long ago how to cry without making a sound. That night, I started coughing blood. I didn't tell her. What would be the point? She had her life, her career, her shining future. I wasn't going to drag her down with my dying body and my medical bills and my poverty. Instead, I went to the free clinic, waited for hours among the other sick and poor, finally saw a doctor who looked too tired to care. He ran some tests, told me to come back in a week. The diagnosis was lung disease, something about scarring, about exposure to chemicals, probably from the factory, from all those years breathing in whatever toxins filled that air. Advanced. Treatment would be expensive, very expensive. "What if I don't get treatment?" I asked. The doctor looked at me with sad, knowing eyes. "Then you have maybe a year, maybe less." "I'm sorry." I nodded, thanked him, took the prescription he gave me, something to manage the pain, the cough, and went to the pharmacy. The medication was too expensive. I bought the cheapest over-the-counter stuff I could find, went home, started putting my affairs in order. I wrote letters, lots of them, to Sarah mostly, but also to a few old friends, to Mrs. Liu, who'd passed away years ago, but whose memory I still cherished. I wrote about my life, about my choices, about what it meant to love someone who couldn't love you back the same way. I wrote about sacrifice and hope and the price of dreams. I put the letters in a box, put the box under my bed, kept living, kept dying, kept silent. Sarah visited once during those months. Brief visit, late at night after work. She looked stressed. "How are you, Mom?" she asked, scrolling through her phone. "Fine, sweetie. How's work?" "Crazy. I'm managing 3 projects right now, barely sleeping." I looked at her, really looked at her. Saw the dark circles under her eyes, the tension in her jaw, the way her fingers moved restlessly, never still. She was burning herself out, just like I had. But for what? For who? "Sarah," I said softly, "are you happy?" She looked up, surprised. "What? Yeah, of course, why?" "You just seem tired." "I'm fine, Mom, just busy." She checked her watch. "Actually, I should get going, early meeting tomorrow." She left. I stood at the window watching her car pull away and coughed into my hand. It came away red. As the months blurred together, pain became my constant companion. I stopped going to work, couldn't anymore, couldn't breathe well enough to stand for hours or lift heavy things, lived off my savings, what little there was, ate less, slept more, wrote more letters. Sarah called once a week. I never told her I was dying. What was the point? She had her life. I'd given her that life. My job was done. Sometimes I'd look at old photos. Sarah as a baby, gummy smile and bright eyes. Sarah at her school play, dressed as a tree, so proud. Sarah at graduation, cap and gown, looking toward a future I'd paved with my own flesh and blood. I loved her. God, I loved her. Even as she erased me from her story, even as she introduced me as the housekeeper, the cleaning lady, the help, I loved her with a ferocity that hadn't dimmed even 1 degree in all those years. Maybe that was the problem. Maybe I loved her too much. Maybe I should have demanded more, should have taught her to see me, should have refused to be invisible. But how could I? When all I wanted was for her to be happy, to be free, to soar without the weight of my poverty dragging her down. The cough got worse, the blood more frequent, the pain sharper. I started sleeping in the chair because lying down made it worse. Started writing my final letters. Dear Sarah, I wrote with shaking hands. I worked my hands raw to give you everything, every blister, every ache, every sleepless night, all for you. I don't regret it. Not 1 second, but I wish. I wish you could have seen me, really seen me. Not as something to be ashamed of, but as someone who loved you more than life itself. I wish I had been brave enough to demand that you see me. I wish you had been brave enough to look. I sealed the letter, put it in the box with all the others, closed my eyes. So I died on a Tuesday morning in March, alone in my apartment, sitting in my chair, the early light streaming through the dusty window. It didn't hurt as much as I thought it would. Mostly, I just felt tired, so very tired. My last thought was of Sarah as a little girl, running toward me with her arms outstretched, shouting, "Mama, Mama," with pure, uncomplicated joy, before she learned to be ashamed. Sarah found me 3 days later. I wasn't there to see it, of course, but I can imagine. The landlord called her when I didn't answer, when the neighbours complained about the smell. She drove over, probably annoyed at the interruption to her workday, probably already planning what to say, how to handle this inconvenience. She opened the door with her spare key, saw me in the chair. I imagine she stood there for a long moment, frozen. Then maybe she moved closer, called my name, touched my cold hand, and realised. She found the box that afternoon, under the bed where I'd left it clearly labelled, "For Sarah." Inside letters, dozens of them, and other things. Her old lunchbox, the one with the cartoon characters, the programme from her elementary school play. Photos of us together, me smiling despite my exhaustion, her small and bright beside me. Report cards I'd saved, acceptance letters, newspaper clippings of her college achievements. A ledger where I'd tracked every expense, every sacrifice. New school shoes for Sarah, skipped 1 meal, tutoring for Sarah, walked 5 miles to save bus fare. Prom dress for Sarah, worked double shift and slept 3 hours. A life of love documented in worn paper and fading ink. She read the letters. I imagine her sitting on my old bed, the one where we used to curl up together when she was small, reading my final words, crying. Maybe not at first. Maybe at first she was numb, shocked. But then the tears would come, hot and bitter, and far too late. She would read about the day at the school gate, about the company dinner, about all the times she'd introduced me as someone else, something else, anything else but what I was. Her mother, who loved her with every atom of her being. She would learn about the illness, about how I'd chosen to die alone rather than burden her, about the cheap medicine and the missed treatments and the nights I'd coughed blood into rags and hidden them so she wouldn't know. She would understand, finally, the price of her shame, and she would realise, too late, always too late, that I had seen her. I had always seen her. Every achievement, every moment, every breath. I had seen her and loved her and given her the world. But she had never seen me. Here's the twist, though. The thing I couldn't write in those letters because I only realised it at the very end. In those final moments when breath became precious and clarity came with the approach of death. I was wrong too. Not about loving her, never about that, but about hiding, about accepting invisibility, about teaching her, through my silence and my acceptance of her shame, that some people matter less than others, that some love is meant to be hidden, apologized for, erased. I taught her to be ashamed of poverty by being ashamed of myself. I taught her that sacrifice should be silent by never demanding recognition. I taught her that mothers exist to be used and forgotten by allowing myself to be used and forgotten. I thought I was giving her freedom. But I was really teaching her that love could be conditional, could be hidden, could be denied without consequence. And now she knows the truth. Too late for me, but maybe not too late for her. Maybe she'll look at her own life differently now. Maybe she'll understand that success without connection is just polished emptiness. Maybe she'll learn to see the people she steps over on her way up. Maybe she'll learn that some costs are too high, even for ambition. Or maybe she won't. Maybe she'll cry for a while, feel guilty for a while, and then fold my memory away like those old photographs. Something to be taken out occasionally and examined with a mixture of sadness and relief. That it's over. I hope not. God, I hope not. I hope she takes those letters and really reads them, really understands. I hope she learns to look at the invisible people in her life, the janitors in her building, the servers in her restaurants, the assistants in her office, and see them, really see them. Because every one of them is someone's daughter. Every one of them is working themselves to death for someone they love. Every one of them deserves to be seen. I hope she learns that pride and shame are two sides of the same worthless coin. That family isn't something to hide or display based on how it makes you look. That love, real love, the kind that blisters your hands and breaks your back and empties your bank account and fills your heart to bursting, is the only thing that matters in the end. I hope she forgives herself eventually. Because I forgave her a long time ago. Maybe I forgave her too easily, accepted her rejection too readily. But I forgave her because that's what mothers do. We love, we forgive, we sacrifice, sometimes too much, sometimes so much that we disappear entirely, erased by our own devotion. She'll carry my ghost now. Every success, every achievement, every moment of triumph will be shadowed by the memory of my absence. The woman who made it all possible but wasn't allowed to witness it. The love she denied until it was too late to acknowledge. Maybe that's my real legacy. Not the education I gave her or the opportunities I created. But this, the weight of unconditional love that was rejected and the understanding of what that rejection cost. Both of us. I worked my hands raw to give her everything. And she spent her life pretending I didn't exist. But here's the thing I finally understood at the very end. I existed. I mattered. Not because she saw me, but because I loved her. That love was real whether she acknowledged it or not. My life meant something whether she claimed me or not. I was not invisible. I was only unseen. And there's a difference. I wish I'd understood that sooner. I wish I'd taught her that truth. That we define our own worth, not through others' recognition, but through the quality of our love, the integrity of our choices, the courage of our convictions. I wish I'd been brave enough to stand in that playground and say, I'm her mother. These bandaged hands fed her. This tired face stayed awake all night when she was sick. I matter. See me. But I didn't. And now it's too late for me. Not too late for her, though. Not yet. So this is my final gift. Delivered after death. The truth. All of it. The love and the sacrifice and the shame and the silence and the cost. All of it laid bare in letters and ledgers and photographs and memory. Take it, Sarah. Look at it. Learn from it. And for God's sake, don't make my mistakes. Love loudly. Demand to be seen. Know your worth. And when you think of me, and you will, I know you will, for the rest of your life, don't just remember your shame. Remember my love. Remember that I gave you everything I had, gladly, fiercely, without reservation. Remember that invisibility is not the same as absence. Remember that love is quiet, but its absence echoes forever. And most of all, remember this. I saw you. Every day of your life, I saw you. I only wish you could have seen me too. Thank you, my loves, for watching until the end of the video. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you won't miss the newest videos.